Hello, everyone, and welcome to Compassionate Conversations. I'm Tanys Coughlan from My Place Home Care, and we have Heidi Gagne, also from My Place Home Care. Welcome. And we have a special guest today, Jody Maffett. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you?
About me, I was raised in the East End of Ottawa by a widower father. And in 2015, he had, actually, let me back up. My mom died when I was 13. And a few months after that, my father would have the dinner conversations that started with, if I drop dead, call Uncle Gary. So we always did have a gallows sense of humor, I guess, but it also made us feel safe and protected. You know, we wouldn't be homeless orphans out on the street. That's because my dad always had his estate papers and updated on a regular basis. Anyhow, fast forward to 2015, Dad was a 79-year-old, very active and independent person, married to a lovely, second marriage, married to a lovely retired teacher. And he had a traumatic brain injury. So he lived in Collingwood in the winter and Lanark in the summer. And I rushed, this was in February, so I rushed to Toronto where he was having neurosurgery. And then he was in Bridgepoint for rehab for a few months as well. And during that time, it was up to my sister and I to continue Dad's life. So all the recurring bills, it was crazy. There was so much stuff. Passwords written down, but that didn't work, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. And Brenda, my stepmother, was already showing signs of her dementia. And so she wasn't able to help. It was a very upsetting thing for her. So we decided at that point it was best that Dad come back to Ottawa where all his kids are, his grandkids, my 3 children. And we lived at the cottage in Lanark on Dalhousie Lake in the summer, which was great for him. And I was moving rocks and I hit my head. So there was a lot of blood, but it wasn't serious. But the first thing I thought of was, okay, my dog has a vet appointment. Nobody knows that except me. I'm divorced. Nobody knows what meds she takes. Nobody knows who her vet is. Nobody knows. And I'm self-employed. And then my brain just started thinking about all the stuff my sister and I had gone for or looked for when Dad was recovering. And my life is a lot more complicated than Dad's ever was. He'd been retired for quite a long time. So, I mean, I had to take care of his pensions, his recurring bill payments. We both my sister and I had access to Dad's bank accounts, but we both missed a recurring payment for the internet for 4 years.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, that was not a cheap. Dad never knew. We never told him. So it's like $4,000, right? And no, we didn't get the money back. Anyhow, so I started off this little cheat sheet for my kids, you know, my email access, my clients, I have a bookkeeper because I'm not good at math. I have a lawyer because I'm not good at legal. All these silly little things, my insurance, my bank accounts, my RSPs, passwords. You know, one of the hardest things was the mail slot in the community mailbox. I must have gone, so there are 40 in them? I must have gone through 39 before I found Dad's. And it's, it's just one more thing. And you're trying to get Dad healthy. He did recover. He recovered quite well. And it was just things. And I'm working full time and I've got 3 kids. And it was just one thing on top of another. Dad never knew what a struggle it was, but it was really hard. So I made that cheat sheet for my kid. I mentioned it to my best friend. She wanted one, and then another friend wanted one, et cetera, et cetera. So I made these interactive PDFs where you can fill out your own information. And I'm a graphic designer. I do a lot of print work. So I had them printed in Ottawa. And then because we live in Ottawa, I had them translated to French. It was interesting because I was selling them at Mill Street Books I sell them in all the independent bookstores in Ottawa and some gift shops as well, and places in Kingston and Vancouver. But yeah, in Almont, they were a little put off by the title of "It's Been Nice, But Now I'm Dead."
I was just
So
going to
made
say,
a gentle version for
you
them.
need to say the title.
Yeah,
It's
the title of the main journal is "It's Been Nice, But Now I'm Dead," or perhaps just really, really sick, because that was what Dad's situation was, right? And a lot of people buy them, and a lot of people buy them just for the password information.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, enter it in. A lot of people use pencil, because then you can, every time you have to change a password.
Yeah.
So it's just, I have really important stuff. If you have a mortgage, who your mortgage holder is, who your insurance, everything about your home. I have an app to open my garage door. I can't do it anyplace else. So my sister, my daughter, and I both have the app on our phone. But what if something happens, right? Like, what if it made me back up when I was 40. I'm 61 now. I was in the hospital. My appendix burst. And while I was in the hospital, I was emailing people, my clients. These are big corporate gung-ho guys, totally illegible, and they would get back to me, and they were very understanding, thank goodness. But now my daughter's on all my email. My daughter's on my bank accounts. My son's, it's trickier now. But so my online life, if I'm in a coma for 6 months, I don't want to pay Adobe $80 a month for my subscription. Streaming services, even rewards cards, things like that. I have your will and your estate papers cover a lot of things, but there's a lot of stuff in my house, and I don't care what the kids do with it. But this is a list of the stuff you might want to think about. Give it away. I don't care. If I'm still working, I have a boss. I have a pension, perhaps. I have my contact information, what materials I have at home. Like if I have a laptop that belongs to the office. Medical, who my doctor is, who's my preferred pharmacy. If I have hearing aids, which I don't, even though I'm profoundly hard of hearing, where do I get my batteries? Where do I get tested? Who's my eye doctor? Who's my dentist? Have I made arrangements with a funeral home? So I have a friend whose mother passed away. She had dementia of some form for a number of years, and she passed away. It was a good death, and they had her cremated, and they found out a long time afterwards she had a plot.
Oh.
So I'm not sure what happened to that, if they could resell it, but I know one of her husbands had been buried next to her. So just the other day, I was at a fundraiser for something, and I bumped into this couple. A lot of times I donate to these charities. And they were talking about the book, and he had just had a stroke and was in hospital for a few months and then rehab, much like Dad did. And she didn't know how to pay any of the bills. So she was going in constantly. He wasn't able to communicate. He was recovering so well. You could not know. So I'm very happy for them. But, you get stuck. Insurance, legal stuff, like, one of my things, I do presentations with estates lawyers, and I really push getting a will, your POAs sorted, and it's not legally called DNR, but you know what I mean, the final,
the understanding that,
Yeah.
How far do you go down the medical line before you pass? You give it up. And then a lot of miscellaneous stuff. For instance, I have social media. My dad sure didn't. So he didn't care about that. So there's a lot of space to write your individual needs. So I took care of Dad for about 10 years, and it was great. He was totally cognizant, just very dependent. And that was really hard for him. And he passed away last June, very short illness. passed away peacefully with no one in the room, because that's like dad and doesn't like to make a fuss, right? So
Yes.
my sons came in, they're both bartenders, and they came in with some top shelf scotch and gave dad a good swig of that, and he loved that. So he was
Good.
on a lot of anti-seizure meds,
Mhm.
and so he couldn't have any of his beloved scotch. So anyhow, so that's my story. And
so-
I have 3 kids, and I don't want to leave a mess for them.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing that, and so when we first connected.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
It's okay. Can you hear me?
There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Can you hear me though now? Is it just me? Is it my microphone?
Yeah. Turn that up a little, please, Heidi.
Okay.
Is it just me? I'm so
No,
sorry.
it's Heidi. It's Heidi. We're just going to get her to turn her microphone up a little.
Is that too loud?
No. That's
Is
good.
that better, Jody? Can you hear me now?
You can't hear her yet? And now we're getting feedback.
Speakers, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, guys. We're having some technical issues. No worries.
Can you hear me now or no?
I can.
Okay. Perfect. I was going to say
sorry.
No, that's fine.
It's okay.
It
happens.
Technology. It works great when it works, right?
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
I was going to say, when we first connected, you sent me a copy of the journal and the book. And, I was looking through it, and there's some things since I've started working in this field. I've talked about this I've started to talk about it with my parents, and my sister and my husband. But you really do highlight a lot of things that I wasn't even, thinking. Reward cards. How many reward cards do we have?
I know.
And then what happens to it? Your online presence is so huge nowadays. And I mean, you just don't think about all these little things that you might have signed up for something and it's only $5 a month, like Sirius XM. Like, we just signed up for my husband because he drives 2 hours, a 2-hour commute every day.
Right.
So he likes the radio, and if he had just done it without me really knowing, there's, $15 a month that I wouldn't have thought about. Luckily, I generally do all the bills, but I have learned that we talk about everything. So he knows how I do it. I show him our calendar, and we share bank accounts. So he has access to all that, but we do share, he knows when it's happening, when I pay it, which made a huge difference, because we've taken turns over our years of our relationship as to who's taking care of what.
Okay.
And so we know the basics of that sort of thing. But if there are some couples or some families who have never spoken about it, you don't think about all the little things. You think, sure, will, POA, house insurance, okay, I have an idea, okay, my parents, they don't have a mortgage, and I know what township they live in, so I can find out the information for their property taxes.
Yeah.
But I'm also grieving, say, or you're in the moment of you're grieving for either the loss of your parent or the loss of who they were if they were in an accident or an illness that suddenly hit them. And you're not thinking about that. And you also have your life to live. You also still have your family.
The most tragic story where a couple had lost their 27-year-old son in a workplace accident. So as a mom, that's the most horrifying thing I can ever imagine. And they had to pay thousands in probate fees to access his finances. They didn't want the money, but it was theirs, right? But because we didn't have any will or anything like that, it was just, and they're grieving, and you're grieving much more.
A loss that you shouldn't be expected to have.
No, it's not in the natural order of things, right?
Right.
So I've heard just horrible stories and some funny ones. So it all kind of balances out.
That's very true. I I've been chatting with, like I said, I've been chatting with my parents a lot about it. And, one time my parents used to travel down to Florida to visit my grandmother when she was still alive. And my dad once said, "Oh, we have money stashed in the house. This is where it's located if we don't come back." And I was just like, "Dad, why would you tell me that? I don't need to know that." And for the life of me, I can't remember where he said it was. But I mean, that was also like 7 or 8 years ago. But it's things like that. If he hadn't told me that, I never would have known. If something had happened, I'm sure I probably could have figured out where in the house he would have stashed it, and I would have known it was there. And so I could have looked for it.
You could have otherwise donated his clothes to a charity, and somebody picks up his jacket, sticks their hand in the pocket, and comes
there's
out
$5,000.
It's never happened to me, but
it would be nice.
It would be nice.
I wouldn't complain. But there are so many things of those details that you just don't think about it. And people are really are getting better and better at, planning, pardon me, wills and funeral planning and all that. But the rest of it, we forget. We forget medical. My dad had this, but I remember he had a medical issue a couple years ago. I don't know where that is. And my parents are meticulous at recording things. Yeah. My mom is, they record their mileage on their car, like how far they drive.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. I'm not sure why.
You never
but
know.
It works for them. but so they are meticulous. So I know that in a pinch I could do it. But again, I'm grieving. So having something in one place that's going to tell me this is what I need to do is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And it was still winter, so they were in Collingwood, and Dad was in Toronto. So I went up and down that 400 so many times. And Dad also had celiac disease, which meant I was bringing him food in.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's an interesting thing. As a caregiver, Dad did not want to go into his seniors home. He tried one and it was lovely and they tried their best, but it's just not. If you have celiac disease and you plan on going into a long-term care place, it's beyond difficult for them. So I liked having him here. I'm the best gluten-free cook around. So,
but that also is something. Like if you have a medical, like celiac, you're very limited in what you can eat, but you also might not like half the things that you are allowed to eat.
It's funny because I did a little book at the suggestion of my brother-in-law whose father has Alzheimer's, and it's a tiny little sweet book. And I did some research and I found that a lot of memory care places suggest making a journal, but they don't actually have one. So I made one, and it has things like mine for the one I filled out for Dad, because I was always worried something would happen to me, and somebody else besides the kids or my sister and brothers had to step in. How would they know he hates pasta, even the gluten-free stuff? How would they know how he likes his coffee? What does he not like to talk about? And things to jog, like family members' nickname as a kid, where did you go to school, what trips and then a journal in the back saying who visited. So, yeah, those little things, I was always so worried about something happening to me because I knew my father best, I think. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And he lived with you, right?
He did.
Yeah.
He was prone to seizures and he was very frail. And we had PSWs come in a couple of times towards the end as he was declining. We had PSWs, and it was even up in the boonies in Lanark, I was able to get help in there.
Wow.
So, yeah, because Dad was a retired Mountie, so they're very conservative men. So there was no chance he was going to let me bathe him or even watch him in the shower.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he was able to maintain all his dignity, and the kids would come over and chat. My daughter's a history buff, like if Dad's a political scientist, and so they would chat about God knows what. So he would be very pleased. She's going into her master's this September.
Awesome.
So you liked education.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So I'm just scrolling through the online book that you have, and it just popped up. I totally did. Another thing you didn't think about is under your home section, condos or apartment landlord contact information, your internet provider. like you do have garage door on there because
I do.
So many things are apps. My husband just recently got hearing aids, and to control his hearing aids and everything, it's all an app on his phone.
An app. Yep.
And you just don't think about these kinds of things.
All the little tiny stuff. One of the most important things was to me was my dog, right? And you know, like I said before, I thought, you know, her vet is what med she's on. I adopt the seniors now. So, and I give them the best golden years possible. But who takes care of her if I can't? You know, so I have a person who has I prearranged with somebody. If something happens to me and it's more than a week, my kids are happy to take care of Jenny for a week or so. But if they have jobs and school, if I'm out of commission for 6 months or worse, I need somebody to take Jenny.
My parents did that. They adopted a dog recently, and they're in their mid. My mom is moving up into the late 70s, and my dad turned 80 last year, and they wanted to adopt a dog. And they were like, so would you guys be able to take her if anything were to happen? And at the time we had 3 dogs. Unfortunately, we lost one dog last May, and then our other dog passed on Wednesday.
Oh no.
Yeah. He was sick, and it then suddenly got worse. So we are down to the one dog who is the same age as my parents' dog. They're about 6 months different. So it kind of works perfectly. And, you know, they're going to become even closer because I'm sure I'm, you know, when we go for a full day, I'm going to take my one little dog who is used to having many dogs with her. You know, and to stay. But that was a concern they had too before they went through the process of adopting, because
I belong to some Facebook dog groups, and it's amazing how many times my friend is going into the hospital. Her dog needs some place to stay. So if you wind up going with a professional place, that can run you into the thousands. Well, my dad was recently in the hospital. He was in the hospital for about 6 days, and my mom was going back and forth because my dad was unconscious a lot of the time and so weak that he couldn't think. He couldn't think about what they were saying to him. So my mom was there constantly. So I went and picked up the dog, and she stayed with us for a few days. So it was one less concern that my mom had while she was concentrating on my dad. But again, you know, I called her and I said, do you want me to take Penny? She's like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Could you do that? Yeah, of course. You know, but again, thinking and planning ahead, as difficult as it can be, because it's hard to think about something happening to one of our loved ones, but you got to think about it. I'm so glad that people are talking more openly about it. Like death doulas are a thing now, and we know more, perhaps because I was in the middle of things, I hear about it more, but I think it's becoming more widely known. There's an event coming up, and it's all about death in the Glebe Community Center next month. And then there's another one, Active Expo at Carleton, and it's I'm part of that as well. So we seem to be talking about these things more, I think.
And I think it's funny because it's funny that you mentioned the death doula or the end of life doula. Earlier this month on our podcast, Compassionate Chats, we did have an end of life doula come on to talk about what she does and how she got into it. She also owns a home care company in Ottawa. And so it's we're doing an advocacy series this year on our Compassionate Chats. So we're having different people from different sectors, on how to advocate for yourself, your clients, and what you can do. So she came on as an end of life doula, and it was a very interesting conversation. And it seems more calming to have that person, you know, and so but knowing that they exist, and somebody say, you know, I'm really, really concerned, I don't know how to handle this, to know that there's somebody out there. Okay, you know, you put it in your journal and you say, yes, you know, I would like to have an end of life doula if it comes down to that, because it will calm me. And I just think it's great. I think the more we talk about it, the more accepting it is, and it's not taboo to talk about death, and it might be a little easier for your family.
Yep, absolutely.
And then you can celebrate who they are and who they were, as opposed to getting
Their
stressed
illness.
out about everything else. Yeah,
for sure.
And we had a funeral director assistant on. We've been very dark lately. I don't we might be changing that up.
Okay. It's a part of life.
It is, but he was saying that there's a lot more end of life celebrations versus structured funerals.
Right.
And I think that's a great way to do it. Like, yes, it happens. We're all going to. It is, death and taxes, the only thing that's guaranteed. But to celebrate who we were, as opposed to that we're not there anymore. I just find that that's more of, living on forever and ever. You live on in the memories of others.
Yeah, it's always easier when a person's old, when they pass.
Yes.
But I've been to a couple of young people's funerals, and they're just absolutely, there's no celebration whatsoever.
No.
No,
you can't.
Yeah, we're going to try. Dad was cremated, and he's over at my sister's now, and which is what he wanted. And he was very explicit about it. That man used to wake up every morning here and say, "Am I not dead yet?" So, like, no, Dad, you're not. You want a muffin? He was ready. I mean, for somebody who had been so independent all his life, and he was so frail every day, and he would have seizures and be in the hospital. And we never had an issue with triage in the hospital. When Dad had a seizure, he was absolutely right up to neurosurgery. So, or neuro.
Yeah.
But he used to ask that quite often. No, Dad, you're still here. Mm-hmm.
So do you? I mean, the title of your book is very funny. I
have a gentle version.
I'm assuming that humor, our family, when we're dealing with dark
gallows humor, right?
Yeah, we always go into the joking, because that's the only way we can feel like we can make it through.
Well, I've told my daughter what my wishes are.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, no, I'm going to stuff you and put you in the corner and say, have you repeat, change the kitty litter, empty the dishwasher. But
my oldest daughter always said she'd like, if she was to die first before us, she would like to be shot out of a cannon.
Nice.
Yeah. I was like, I would try to make that happen.
Is that legal?
No, probably not. I also don't think I could actually do it, but how else do you talk about it?
I know. I like the celebrations of life. They're quite nice. And when my grandma died, we had the funeral. My grandmothers both died 3 days apart. One here in Ottawa in Manor Park, and the other in a small town in southwestern Ontario. And both had very small family-only funerals, and it was not a bad thing. So both were ready. So hopefully we can all be in that place when the time comes. Yeah. But like I said, I've been hit by way too many stupid things. Like Dad's head injury was a bump. We're not even sure where. We think curling, but it could happen to anyone, anytime. Wow. I'm the lady who stands on the street and says, put your helmet on to the kids biking by, right?
Yeah.
Because one little bump had such fallout.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Everything changed.
Yeah. My father-in-law died by a head injury.
Really?
He slipped on the ice and hit the back of his head.
Yeah. It's so easy to do. It's so easy. It's terrifying how fragile we can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as a worrier, which I am a very big worrier, it's a balance.
Yeah.
Like I need to do all this stuff and write everything down, but I'm also terrified to do it, because then I'm going to be like, okay,
real.
Yeah, it makes it real. And I already have those moments when I'm in the car and I'm like, what would happen if like a car hit me? What would happen?
Yeah.
And then I go into these dark tunnels. And so I am going to be very honest with you. I promote, get your will in order. And it's just really hard to start it. It's just like going to the dentist for me. It's like, to make that appointment is terrifying. But once I have that appointment, it's fine. And then they just tell me, come back at this date. And I'm like, okay. And then I come back at this date. And then I have cleanings twice a year because they're just telling me to come back. But that first step.
Yeah.
Well, I was surprised how many places we had to send Dad's POAs to. So I was Dad's personal care POA, and my sister was his belongings, property? I think, personal
financial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was surprised how many places, like Bell, all the utilities, DRA, the bookkeepers, etc. We had to send it everywhere. So, and notarized. So,
right.
Yeah. But that's the things you have to think about is you need to have that copy. You need to have it ready. You need to have it as an electronic form. I mean, when we bring on clients who have POAs, we also need copies of that because they're making decisions. And if anything were to happen, we need to have proof that you're allowed to make those decisions.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's also a matter of keeping everything up to date.
Yeah.
Because like you said, people use it in pencil. I do. I am one of those people that have all my passwords for all my online accounts written on a piece of paper because, but there's way too many. There's too many passwords for everything. And it's exhausting. And they're like, you can't use the same password for everything.
Oh, I know. It's not strong enough and everything. It's like Dad would he loved his iPad, right? And he would randomly change the number. I'm like, why'd you change it from this? And he goes, well, I used my regiment number now. And I'm like, but I don't know that, Dad. And if you want me to look at your iPad and set up, your crossword puzzle, then I can't do that. What's your regiment number? I'm not sure.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
So fun.
That was okay. That was okay. We just rolled with everything, right? So he had a very good sense of humor, and I'm much more fortunate than a lot of other caregivers are. So he was a nice man. Sorry?
How did you deal with that? We've talked about caregiver burnout. Did you ever come to a point where that was? Yeah. Even with an accepting parent who and easygoing and everything, it still came to a head.
I'm still not used to my new normal. Dad died last June, and caregiving is very isolating. It's very, you're on hyper alert, you're hyper vigilant all the time. So I had a baby monitor, because Dad's sleeping wasn't the same as mine. So he would wake up and say, I'm hungry. And I'd be up in a flash. Yeah. So you're hyper vigilant, and that's so stressful. And I would have respite weekends where I'd run to my friends' places. They were so good to me. My friends are so good to me. And, but I'd get texts and phone calls all the time saying, where's this? How do you do this? What's this? And so there wasn't really any kind of downtime, I guess. And I belong to a lot of caregivers. If you use Reddit at all, there's a lot of caregiver burnouts, and we just vent. And even though I'm post-caregiver, the residual effects are still there. I will never be the same person I was before. And that's okay. But I'm never going to take care of another person unless it's my children. And I'm never going to let my children take care of me.
I find that a lot. That happens a lot. It's even the owner of our company, Kumar, his story as to why the company was created was because his mother had dementia and diabetes, and she went through the public system, and it was awful. It was difficult, and he was getting phone calls all the time,
Mm.
and the inconsistencies, and he was doing it, him and his wife, and their children were young at the time.
Yeah.
I knew him at the time. I knew his mother, and so it was a difficult time. I didn't realize how difficult it was for him, but he says now, he's like, my kids are not going to take care of me.
No.
I'm not going to a retirement home, but they're not going to take care of me.
No, I mean, we do have maid. I'm not saying that's an option, and I plan to live at least another 20 years trying to pick up rocks on the property and stuff. But my kids are good in that they say, don't do that. We'll do it. So,
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
and I'm very cautious. So, I mean, you have to be. I'm 61. I'm profoundly hard of hearing, so my balance isn't quite what another person's is. So I'm very careful so far.
So you live within your limits. You
That's
don't
right.
try to push it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And I
very
think that I think more people need to learn it's okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not be good at everything. It's
Absolutely.
okay for people to be upset that
Yeah.
you can't do something. That's
Yeah.
something I'm learning. That's my own journey, is learning that it's okay to have people upset with something that you can't do.
Yeah.
And there is nothing wrong with not being able to do everything.
Yeah, my daughter's probably the biggest one who tells me, don't do that. Stop doing that, which is great. So
Mhm.
Do you
And I-
listen?
most of the time,
There you go.
most of the time, she's good. I'm glad actually. She's still in university. She just finished off grad school, and she moved back here. She starts at Carleton for her master's in September. And she's 31 and she still lives at home. She did move out for a while, but we decided between the two of us that the expense was just renting a place downtown was stupid.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad she's here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's nice to have another able-bodied. My sons don't live here, but I've got my girl
Yeah.
who will not take care of me if something happens to me.
Sorry.
The phone's always ringing because we're busy.
Yeah, I know. I have somebody calling me.
So I also do presentations, right? And
Okay.
I have a few lawyers available to do them. I did one in Navan with Phil Graham-Maitre of GVE in Orleans.
Mhm.
It was so much fun. And so I kind of pace myself on the presentations because I find them, it's a lot. So, and then I did one I was invited to Perth to do one with Holly Agnew, who's my lawyer, and they are so much fun. It's shocking how open people are about talking about these things, and all I really do is tell my story about my dad and why I created the journal, and then a lawyer steps right in, and there are tips and tricks. You want to keep all the money in your family, right? So if you don't, I mean, Holly does the things, don't be afraid of probate. And there's another thing she talks about having a second will. I didn't know you could do that. We also talk about maid. We also talk about cohabitation agreements because those are huge. So if somebody dies and they're in his house, do the children step in and kick the cohabitator out? That happens quite often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So it's really surprising. I have a friend who's been living with her beau for about almost 10 years now, and I'm after her. Get this agreement done. Protect yourself. Her girls both live with their significant others, not married. I'm like, protect yourself. Write these things down. Don't assume you're going to separate or get divorced or whatever down the line. But when so I was married, and when I left, all the bills have been in his name. So we sold our house and I rented for 2 years, and I had to make massive security deposits to Bell.
Experience in rent and credit.
Yeah. So because they had, while I was paying the bills, they had no record of me.
That's right.
So I always tell people, if you move in together, put those bills. If he gets hit by a beer truck, you can continue paying the bills. So
Right.
I had that issue too when we moved into our current home. My husband was living in Ottawa. I moved from Kingston to be with him in Ottawa, so everything was just in his name. And as we moved from the apartment to the house, it was all in his name. And then we moved down here we bought this house, and everything, we just kind of transferred what we could. And then I would try to call Rogers. So there was an issue with the phone. Well, you're not on the account. I'm like, okay, but see, like, this is my name. This is my phone. It's sent to my name. They're like, yeah, but you're not on the account. Okay. So then then he did all the calling and put me back on put my name on the account. Yes, you're allowed to talk to her. She's the one that does everything. And now we share. Yeah. Now both our names are on things. We take turns with different things because I needed to rebuild my credit. So, for a while there, his name was on our house only because I was on mat leave when we bought our house.
Oh, right.
So I had no income. Now, I wasn't concerned because I honestly wasn't concerned that I would get
shafted.
Yeah. I never had that concern. So when we did our renewal, 5 years later, we added me on because I had a steady income. But at the time I didn't have steady income, and it would have hurt us even more. But I was very trusting in my husband with reason. So I wasn't concerned with that. But I did have people say, you're not on the mortgage. You need to be on the mortgage. I'm like, I know. But at the time, it wasn't a good situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you fix it when you can.
It's so important. My daughter's on all my Bell bills and my Rogers and whatnot.
Yeah.
Just a matter of time. Now it's more difficult. So I have a business bank account, and after I had my appendix out, I put Maggie on it, and now I want to put my two sons on it as well. And now you have to have Zoom meetings and everything. You can't just go into a bank and do it. So getting all of us in one place or available on a Zoom call at one time is kind of challenging. We've been trying to do it for more than a year now. So
it's a lot of work. So start with one thing, get that organized, and then move to the next. And it's just, it's one of those conversations I'm going to be having with my parents in the next little while. I mean, I'm their POA, I'm their executor, so I have all that, but that's as far as it goes, and they do my grandmother was amazing. I've said it before on our podcast. My grandmother was amazing when they moved from a home to a retirement community. Her daughters came up and they literally Post-it noted everything.
Yep.
I'll take this. I'll take this. And then my grandmother took, again, meticulous notes. And she's like, okay, I'm taking this with me. But when I move from the little condo into the assisted living or the apartment style where I don't have as much space, then you'll get this. And then you'll get this. Oh, yeah. Like it was brilliant how she did it. And so there was no arguing. There was no contention. This is how it works. She took care of all of it. And I'm pretty sure she had everything organized with my aunt who lived in Florida as well. So she was more boots on the ground kind of sister. The other one's, one lives in Canada, the other one lived in California. So
holy cow, that's all spread out.
It's very
city. It makes it very handy.
Yeah. But we also deal with a lot of people whose parents live in Ottawa, but they live in California, BC, New York. So it is that the online world is fantastic for that. You can keep communication. I mean, we can have team calls and see people and meet people that we might never would have been able to meet and have that connection, which is wonderful. And it allows our parents to be a little more independent. In their own home because they can still see each other, which is fantastic, I think.
I agree. That's true. We all want that, don't we?
We do. My daughter is moving to Toronto. She's going to be going to university in the fall. And so she's very excited about it. But like most of her friends are staying in the Ottawa area. And I'm like, hey, it's not like it was when I went off to school. Like I went off to school in the late 90s where, email was starting. But it was like you wrote a letter.
Yeah.
Nobody wrote a letter when you're 19. Why would you write a letter when you're 19?
Did we
You
have
just made new friends.
No way.
No, well, they were the big block ones, you know, like they were chunkier.
The bricks, yeah.
Yeah, late 90s would have been. I think my first cell phone I got was like a Nokia.
Yeah,
and it was like that, you know, the tube there. And I remember playing one game on it, and I was like, "Look at me play a game on my phone."
Look at me go.
And look at you now.
My kids all keep their phones for years, and then they buy new ones, right? Me, I run them over with my car, and I lose them. Right? That's the kind of mother I am. They used to once say, aren't you worried when I get angry? And they said, you're like a kitten. So I'm not too terrifying, I guess. They're good. They're good kids. So really good kids. So I'm pleased for that.
Well, kudos to you.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, yeah.
Kudos
but you're
to
very, very lucky. It might be difficult in a family that's a little more contentious, or there's jealousy, or there's animosity and anger. And I mean, at least if you do a journal like this, at least your wishes are stated. This is what and you know, and that might help with some of the contention. And
the front page, it says the person. And so a lot of people buy them. They buy them like 10 at a time, right? And then they give them to all their siblings and their kids and everything. And then they'll take one and they'll fill it out themselves and give it to the child or the person who would pick up and run with these things. So I'm always like, hide them well. There's one, there are more now, eh? There's one on Tamu. But there's one in the States I've seen, and it's like a big box, and no shade on them, but I can put this in a safe. I can hide this really well in my house. And if I have the interactive PDF, I can digitally lock it until my daughter can open it, or whoever, my sister. But I can't imagine these big 12 by 18 boxes, and everything's very organized and it looks beautiful and everything, but it won't fit into any safe.
It's true.
So, especially if you live in an area that is like
America. I'm going to hell, I'm sorry.
we try not to be political here, but in the US though, there's a lot of areas of natural disasters. Like hurricanes, earthquakes, well, not as much earthquakes, but hurricanes, tornadoes. So the digital copy makes so much more sense nowadays.
It does. I find it's more women who buy the hard copy, and a lot of men prefer the digital copy. And the younger you are, the more you are likely to prefer the digital copy, which makes sense, I guess. But I still like paper. I still like writing on paper. So I have mine filled out 98%. I haven't completed. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie.
It is a lot of work. I was looking at it. It's a lot of pages of information to find.
Yeah. Sorry.
And you have to find that info too.
Well, and that's it. So I had one woman, she bought it, and she said, I mailed it off to her, and she said, I got it. I filled it out. And I went, how did you do that? You know, she goes, I just sat down and got to work on it. I said, I've never heard of anybody finishing it in a day. Usually it takes a couple of months. I mean, let's be honest here. It's a lot of information that you don't have on hand, which is why it's even better to write it down. So,
right.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know Mom had Spotify.
Yeah. Or they're sharing it with somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, like people share streaming services with other people. They have the account, but
we're not supposed to tell anybody that.
Oh yeah, the family sharing one. This is a family sharing one.
There are some accounts that you pay extra to share.
Yes.
Because I did that with Netflix with my oldest daughter. And it was like $8 for her to pay me for the Netflix versus, you know, your own for $20 or whatever. But I mean, but things like that's going to affect somebody. And who to call when something happens to you? Who do you want called first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and you might not think about the important people. Like, okay, you know, something happens to my parents, I know to call my aunts on my mom's side. Unfortunately, my dad's his siblings have all passed, but I know that there are some people, family friends, that I need to call. Okay, well, what is their current number? Because I might not have to call them. Like, I might not know their number.
Well,
Who
it's
do you
like
want
that,
to
you
speak
know,
to?
like the guy who delivered the firewood, his Globe and Mail subscription, I suspended it, right?
Mhm.
There's all these stupid little things. I mean, I had to take the POA to the post office in order to get some of his mail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, and then if it is death, you also need the death certificate to
Yeah.
do a lot of these things. And then you have to wait for the death certificate. So you can't do all these things. So you're thinking, you're like, okay, I have all this list. Okay, I got to do this, this, and this. But now I need to wait 6 weeks for the death certificate to come in. And then 6 weeks later, you're like, okay, I need to do this.
More.
And then I'm like, oh no, wait, what was that other 5 things that I needed to do? It's all right here.
Yeah.
You have it written down, and then you can go through and check it. And yeah. Oh, it's so overwhelming, and it's not even happening to me.
It is. And it's just getting more complicated every year.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Actually, my kids aren't big social media people. It's more, I always say it's for old people like me, right? We're mostly on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and everything. So, but yeah, they're not real social media things, but they understand Mom is, and if something happens to me, shut her down. So LinkedIn, I'm on that. I have emails. I get hired by clients, and they open up emails for me in their client's name.
Okay.
Jody at IBM, for example, .ca. So they do that. They need to contact those people. They need to contact my suppliers. They need to contact. So I did this in French as well.
Mm-hmm.
My translators, my illustrators, etc. It depends. You know, my work is peaks and valleys. Something might be going on. So it'd be nice to phone Jill and say, Mom's not gonna need you anymore. So just a.
Oh. There's so much. And
that's why I've left a lot of space in there, because everybody's got their own unique, there are prompts for most things, but there are also things that I can't possibly imagine.
Right. How often do you update this? I
did last July, not a great deal, as I didn't want to tick off the people who bought it before, but no, I also do them. I rebrand them for financial groups and lawyers, etc. And I'm doing one for Grief Matters out in Nova Scotia right now. But I have a CS co-op out in the boonies in the East End, and we introduced all the information about farming. So because a lot of their clients are farming, so there's all that information I never even imagined what it could be like. So.
Right.
So does your book cover the entrepreneur as well then? Like
this one was the edition in the August 2025 one, is their self-employment information. So, and my HST number, my business number, my, corporation, if I have partners, who's that, my suppliers, my, main clients, etc. So everybody seems to have a side hustle now.
Everyone's partially self-employed, and you're right. You don't, again, I don't think about it. I wouldn't think about it. If my husband had a side hustle, I wouldn't really think about it. That wouldn't have been my first thing to think of either. Like, that wouldn't have been in my top 5 things to think of if something happened to my partner and I had to deal with all that. So again, also having it written down, however you want to write it down. Your journals are awesome and provide lots and lots of reminders of where you should look and that kind of thing. But if you're also just going to start writing it down yourself, you're not going to think about it.
No.
His side hustle, or even if your partner is or your parents are self-employed, that's not your first concern either. But it needs to be up there. Because it's still going to affect you.
They're still clients.
Affect them.
passive income, where's that money going?
That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's our lives are so complicated, and I'm gonna cough. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm honest. There's all this AI stuff too, right?
Yeah.
And just further complicating things. I don't know.
And
It's a
getting
lot.
it all, sorry, I was going to say getting it all legal and written down because there are so many scammers out there, and every company,
Yes.
everybody is so concerned and so careful, which they should be. But when you're also in a panic because you're just taking care of a loved one and something's going on and you just need them to fix it and they can't because you don't have the right paperwork and they're demanding it, and it's so frustrating. But there are so many horrible people out there that are going to try to do all these things.
No.
And they have to protect their clients. So you got to be understanding, but at least if you have all the information and you know where the paperwork is and you know where your POAs are and everything like that, I mean, at least you can get some things done and it's less stress.
I agree. And I think that's why it's 99% women who buy these, because we don't want to leave that crap on the table for our kids or our loved ones. I'm not saying men don't, but I'd say...
Well, because your dad did. Your dad had it all figured out. He knew everything.
He didn't have the stuff wrden down, though.
Oh.
He had that password list, and none of them worked. So
he tried.
I had to find out where, oh, my God. You know, they have voicemail on their landline.
Yeah.
Had to find that. Cell phones were an issue. So
password on your cell phone,
and then password on your voicemail on the cell phone.
Yeah. I'm bad. I use a lot of the same number code passwords for things.
Well,
I just don't listen to voicemail, so I mean, that's...
Well, that'll do it.
They'll call it.
It's important. They'll call back.
I see you called. I don't know who you are. I'm not calling you back. I see you called. I know you are where you are. I'm phoning you back.
Yes.
That's right. Well, there's so many scams out there now that I've called some clients before. And if I use my cell number, my cell phone, it comes up my husband's my last name, but it's not the company name. So I do try to use our company line, but I've called. Yeah, I've called, and then there's no, they pick up, but then nothing happens. And I'm like, hello? And then they'll say, oh, hi. Because there's so many, my dad told me about it. There's so many scams that if you say hello in your tone, your voice, or you say, they can get access, or they do something. So my dad is now very careful. And I did have a client, it happened one weekend. I had to call a client in emergency. And so I just used my cell number to call him, and he didn't answer. And I was like, hello? I heard heavy breathing. And I'm like, hello, this is Heidi calling from My Place Home Care. He's like, oh, hi.
Oh,
I was like, what's going on? Are you okay? And but because I called his landline, he's like, I only get scam calls on my landline. I was like, oh,
that's what happens to us too. Nobody ever calls us on our landline. It's always other stuff.
Yeah.
So we have
I have other contact now, but yeah.
I'm so suspicious. I'm so jaded and suspicious. I just don't pick up phone calls. And occasionally we do have a landline here because Dad needed one just in case. Mm-hmm. But I'm just so jaded.
And it's hard. It's frustrating for honest people or people that are dealing with their loved ones' estates or helping out. And you really need to convince people that you are who you are. It's very frustrating. I mean, again, I understand it, but it's very frustrating when all you want to do is cancel a newspaper subscription.
Yeah.
So it was challenging. I remember one time we had so Dad and I lived in Lanark out in the country, and we had the derecho one year, and we had what was it, a lot of tornadoes going down the lake, etc. So I said, okay, that's it. Can I buy a generator? And Dad said, yes, of course. So he had his credit card, and I had a secondary credit card on his account which I used for household things and his needs, etc. So I had his permission to go get a generator from town, and I got a really good deal and everything, and it was refused. It was declined, and I'm like, okay, there must be a limit or something. So I call Scotiabank. I'm the second. No, my dad has to be the one to give
To
permission.
call.
So my dad's really hard of hearing, and he can't. And so I go, well, just bring him into town. I said, that's not going to happen either. So it's okay. I wound up buying one myself, but little things like that. I mean, there was the other one where he had a TFSA, and he said, okay, I'm going to give my kids some money. And it was on over the phone, and you have to answer these security questions. And I'll be honest, we couldn't understand them. And so I went into Scotiabank, and I said, they asked my dad these security questions. Neither of us could understand him. I mean, we both have hearing issues, but it was very unclear. And so I wasn't allowed to say, the man on the phone would ask Dad, what's your mother's maiden name? And Dad would go, what? I can't make out what you're saying. I said, can you ask me? And then I'll ask Dad. And he said, no, absolutely not allowed. And I understand the security is huge, but still there's got to be a medium way of doing it. I mean, we sign on to our bank accounts with so many security levels, it should be okay. But there was another thing when Dad got out of the rehab out of Bridgepoint, which was a beautiful place. And as a young Mountie, Dad had lived in Toronto and lived in Leslieville and worked at the Don Jail. So it was kind of cool because you could see the Don Jail. I took him back up to Collingwood for a weekend, and he needed his debit card. So I took him into the bank. And, or he wanted cash, and I guess, so I took him into the bank. He put his card in and said, I don't remember my password. And so I whispered to him, and he goes, no, that's not it. Typed in. I said, okay, reset it. So I whispered the number to reset it to into his ear. And the bank lady was okay with that. I'm like, you didn't ask me for ID. You have no idea who I am. I could be anybody off the street. So. You
just never know when it's going to happen.
The world is kind of scary.
Yeah.
When I finally found Dad's summer tires at the storage place, they just gave them to me. I guess I look on.
Tires are not hard. They're not high security.
High value.
My son needs a new set of summers. Maybe I'll just tell him to go and get my tires.
Right.
Those are mine.
Although tires can be also very expensive.
Yeah, they can. Yeah.
Tires can be $1,000 each if you want the fancy ones.
I am driving up to Thunder Bay next week, and I still have my very, very good winter tires on my car because my daughter broke her arm at school. She had to come early, so I get to go up and empty her townhouse, which is fun. So that's a 30-hour drive. I have my book written out, so if anything happens to me, my kids can darn well.
There you go.
Exactly.
But nothing will happen.
Of it.
No, nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen. We're putting it out there that nothing will happen.
I'm an extremely cautious driver. I only drive maybe 6 hours a day, and then I stop. So,
yeah, good.
Enjoy the scenery.
Exactly.
It's beautiful. If you ever get the chance to take that drive around Superior, it's gobsmackingly beautiful. And if they touch it to build Walmarts or townhouses, that's a tragedy in itself.
Yeah. Or Amazon shopping places.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Well, I can't believe it, ladies, but we are over our hour.
Oh.
And it has been such a pleasure. It's been lovely to hear your story, Jody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you for asking about the caregiving thing. People just assume once you're done, and life is back to normal. And it's so not true.
It's not.
No.
I haven't had to care for anybody, but my dog that did pass away, I have been the sole one, like he couldn't go up and down the stairs. So I was carrying him every day and I was making sure he was going outside and I was making sure. And then Thursday morning, I realized that my other dog stayed in bed until like 9:30 because I didn't go downstairs. I didn't have to call Lucky and say, hey buddy, let's go outside, you know? And so she just slept on and on. And I've been kind of, my routine is completely off right now. And this was for a dog. So I can understand completely how difficult it would be once you're no longer that caregiver to figure
Nobody
out
needs me
what
anymore.
To do. I feel like that's not true.
It's not. No.
It's
but
only
that
when
is
you
the
want
feeling
them, though.
that you would have. That is what you would feel, though, right? You would
Yeah.
have that feeling for sure. Yeah.
That emptiness.
Just roll with it. That's kind of my attitude.
Yes.
Yeah. You have to.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for doing this book. I think it's a huge service for many, many.
It's also entirely Canadian. I'd like to point that out. It was created by Canadians, translated by Canadian people, and it's printed here in Ottawa. So by Canadians, even that paper is Canadian. So that's always, I've always been able to work my way out. Kind of, I buy locally, then provincially, then countrywide, etc. So there are others out there now, and to move, I think, you know, that
but that wouldn't be Canadian. That wouldn't have all the
I think it's AI too. And I see it on Facebook or whatever. I said, what country is it for? I have cousins in the States who asked me to make an American one. So I did create that with them because there's substantial differences. And that's available.
State to state, there's substantial differences.
Absolutely.
In the US too.
Anyhow, I'm running on again.
It's fine.
No worries. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You're
And
very
it's
welcome.
been lovely. And for all of you watching, thank you so much for joining us as well. And we will see you very soon.
Take care.
Thanks very much.
Bye.